This poor reporter had the worst luck imaginable. On her very first day of work, she was sent to interview a newly resurrected caveman. The moment the primitive man laid eyes on her, he grabbed her with both hands and tackled her to the ground. After being pent up for millions of years, he started letting loose right there in front of thousands of spectators. The military couldn't stop him. The government couldn't stop him. This incredibly powerful man was none other than Pike, known as history's strongest primitive human. It all started a few days earlier when scientists discovered a transparent rock wall more than 6,000 feet underground. Inside the wall, a primitive human over 10 feet tall was locked in fierce combat with a T-Rex. This groundbreaking discovery sent shockwaves through the entire scientific community. On the lab table, the thawed man's skin remained surprisingly elastic. Even the well-traveled Dr. Einstein broke out in a cold sweat at the sight. To prevent worldwide panic, the doctor decided to keep the news under wraps for now. But his assistant had other ideas. He wanted to resurrect the caveman. The doctor angrily dismissed this as pure fantasy. If they brought this primitive man back to life, the consequences would be catastrophic. While the doctor made perfect sense, the assistant believed that if they didn't resurrect this caveman, the very essence of science would become meaningless. Eventually, persuaded by the guy with glasses, the lab secretly launched Project Pike Resurrection. One night, the assistant was working the late shift alone, but his chocolate bar just didn't hit the spot. Suddenly he remembered there was T-Rex meat in the freezer. Unable to resist, he headed straight for the cold storage. With a dinosaur this huge, nobody would notice if he took just one piece. Meanwhile, Dr. Einstein was stunned to discover that Pike's stomach contents were T-Rex meat. This meant Pike was a primitive human who hunted T-Rexes for food. At that very moment, the assistant was pan-frying a steak. The aroma quickly filled the entire lab, and Pike's eyes suddenly snapped open when he caught the scent. The unsuspecting assistant was savoring his meal. The texture was as chewy as beef. Just as he was enjoying his steak, Pike had already broken free from the wires wrapped around him. Following the delicious smell wafting through the air, he appeared right behind the scientist. The man literally wet himself in terror. Standing before him was clearly a savage beast, but to his surprise, Pike didn't hurt him. Instead, he grabbed the T-Rex meat from the table and shoved it into his mouth in one bite. Then he leaned in close to sniff the man. Apparently, in Pike's eyes, this guy wasn't even worthy of being food. The smell from the freezer caught Pike's attention. Seeing his familiar prey, Pike let out an excited roar. The assistant seized the opportunity to slam the freezer door shut. The assistant quickly reported everything to Dr. Einstein. But looking at the dozens of police officers who'd arrived, the doctor just shook his head helplessly. This small force wouldn't last 2 seconds against Pike. The police chief scoffed at this. What, was this guy going to transform into Ultraman or something? Before he could finish his sentence, a hole was blasted through the 16-foot thick wall. Pike appeared before everyone, his face twisted in rage. He charged straight at the police cars, furiously smashing every single one to pieces. After witnessing Pike's terrifying power firsthand, the chief frantically called for backup. The military quickly arrived on scene, bringing their latest combat mech suit. This thing was originally designed to take down African elephants, but now was the perfect time to test its capabilities. Just as the officer was bragging to the doctor about how awesome his mech was, Pike slowly approached the robot. The moment the robot raised its arm, Pike struck first. With just one punch, he shattered the cockpit's bulletproof glass. The pilot wet himself in fear and frantically activated the mechanical arms, trying to lock Pike in place. But Pike pushed hard with his feet, and the mech started spinning in mid-air. In just 2 seconds, humanity's latest high-tech mech suit was defeated. And Pike's power went far beyond this. To contain this beast, more modern weapons were on their way. State-of-the-art Tiger tanks, Falcon attack helicopters, even hundreds of Navy SEALs. To stop Pike, the US military deployed virtually all its military might. But just before the army reached the battlefield, they stopped. Then Colonel Stryden stripped off all his clothes and walked straight toward Pike. He knew that only genuine sincerity could make Pike lower his guard. Next, he would take Pike to Japan, because a female reporter was waiting for him there.